You can't take away people's due process like that. And I don't trust the El Salvadorian government to be making sure that they're not torturing people, that they're vetting them properly. They need to be vetted on this side.
Why do the Democrats always say this could happen?
It did happen. It didn't could happen.
They're torturing them?
Did you watch the video?
I don't think she did, because Jessica Tarloff is absolutely right. It did happen. Unfortunately, we're seeing more and more stories involving individuals who were actually in the United States legally, were not part of any type of Venezuelan gang, but unfortunately were rounded up by ICE and sent to a terrorist detention facility that also, by the way, imprisons hardened criminals and gang members in El Salvador. It's known as CCOT. We've been talking about it, but there's actually a little bit of good news today, because I always want to know, where do the majority of Americans stand on this issue? Now, Trump is still polling well on immigration. It's actually the one area where he is not underwater. 53% of Americans, according to a recent CBS poll, are still liking what Trump is doing in regard to immigration. But those numbers could really take a hit. And this should be a warning to Trump. This poll result should be a warning to Trump, because according to a new poll that was just put out by YouGov, it seems that most Americans actually agree with Fox News host Jessica Tarloff and believe that deporting migrants without due process should not be allowed. And by the way, according to our Supreme Court on multiple occasions, it isn't allowed, okay? Even people who are in the country illegally are protected by our constitutional rights, including the right to due process. But the people we're talking about aren't even in the country illegally, but they got rounded up by ICE anyway. Anyway, so the poll was conducted between March 28th and April 1st, and here's what they found. Deporting immigrants without criminal convictions to El Salvador to be imprisoned without letting them challenge the deportation in court. That was what the basis of the survey was about, right? And here are the results. Only 15% of these respondents said that they strongly support, and 11% say they somewhat support, for a total of 26% supporting the move by the Trump administration to some degree. 26% is still a little too high in my eyes, but it's minuscule. It's minuscule when you think about how things seem online versus how most Americans are feeling. Most Americans want due process, because I'm gonna assume they're smart enough to understand, it is the moral thing to do, it's the ethical thing to do, the constitutional thing to do, but more importantly, when you start cheerleading for the erosion of rights for others, you would be mistaken to think that it's not gonna come back to haunt you or someone you love, someone you know. You have to protect due process. These types of rights help set countries like the United States apart from other countries that we do not in any way favor, wouldn't wanna live in, because there's too much government power and people don't have the right to defend themselves when they're accused of something they maybe didn't do, right? So, in the case of these migrants, we're talking about one guy who was here legally. He had protected status in the United States, but he got rounded up anyway. Now, how would you prove that you have protected status? Well, you would do it through the courts. A judge would weigh in, a judge would adjudicate based on the evidence that's presented. But when you rip due process away, that individual doesn't even have the ability to provide evidence to say, no, I'm not here illegally. I am here legally, here's my protected status. There's no evidence of me being in a gang. So let's get to some more of the results here. On the flip side, 46% said they strongly oppose and 15% say they somewhat oppose, meaning 61% of respondents are against the deportations and indefinite imprisonments. 13% of respondents say that they're unsure of how they feel. So look, we can break things down even further by party affiliation. 32% of Republicans strongly support along with 1% of Democrats and 13% of independents who strongly support the idea of deporting these migrants or these individuals without due process. I can't believe there's even 1% of Democrats who would want this. But 78% of Democrats say, no, you need due process. 45% of independents say the same. And 78% of Democrats strongly oppose of what Trump is doing in ripping due process away from this entire situation. 45% of independents feel the same way, and so do 18% of Republicans. Now, basically, Americans overall oppose the idea of deporting people without due process to El Salvador specifically, and they oppose it by a more than 2-to-1 margin. So look, there's a lot of humanity left in the country. I mean, you wouldn't think it based on what you see online or the doom and gloom that you see in the news day in and day out. But let's go to Jesse Watters now, because I guess we're gonna follow up this good news with Jesse Watters. Let's watch.
Time magazine was there when the gay barber from Venezuela who had a crown tattoo that said mom was being processed coming into the El Salvadorian. Oh, am I boring you again? I'm sorry.
No, but you've been talking about this gay barber from El Salvador with some stupid tattoo for weeks. Weeks, Jessica.
Come on.
It's just a gay barber.
He's not into you.
He's an innocent guy who got swept up in a deportation, and hopefully we get it figured out and straightened out. But a lot of people this country, Jessica, get arrested for things that they didn't do, get falsely accused, falsely convicted.
I'm also against racial profiling.
That doesn't mean you just stop arresting people. That doesn't mean you stop arresting criminals because one guy was arrested who was innocent. It just means you just try to do it better the next time. And I have nothing against the gay barbers. Gay barbers usually give the best haircuts.
Okay. All right, Jesse. So look, this isn't about, oh, we're gonna stop deporting people. That's what look, let's keep it real. He just doesn't want any mention of anything that makes the Trump administration look bad on the one thing Trump is still polling well on. That's what's really at the heart of Jesse Watters being super annoyed with Tarloff bringing this issue up. But this isn't about whether or not you deport individuals who are here illegally or individuals who are here illegally and are committing other crimes. This is about due process. Sending an innocent guy, especially a gay barber or a gay makeup artist, to El Salvador, specifically to that facility, is one of the worst things you could possibly do. That guy can get really hurt. I mean, he's acting like he's being, put in some like vacation, like a resort community or something for the time being. And like, yeah, we'll fix it, we'll get him back. No, he's being sent or has been sent to an awful place where it's difficult for his lawyers to get in touch with him. And there was no due process, which is, by the way, a process put in place to prevent these types of mistakes from happening. I remember the day when Republicans at least pretended they cared about constitutional rights. And by the way, clearly when it comes to American voters, Republican voters, a huge portion of them still do care about those constitutional rights. But you wouldn't think it based on the comments you hear from conservative media figures or even from members of Trump's administration. If you've made a mistake, fess up to it, apologize for it, and talk about how it's not gonna happen again and what you're gonna do to prevent it from happening again. I would venture to say that you would point to the importance of due process. But that's the thing, God forbid you have any politicians in the US that ever take any responsibility for the mistakes they made. All they do is they gaslight, hoping the American people are too dumb to realize what's going on. Democrats did it in the lead up to the 2024 presidential election. You saw how that worked out for them. Now the Trump administration is doing it. So we'll see how it plays out regarding the poll numbers in just a few months. But he's wasting a lot of goodwill by refusing to give people what they are entitled to, and that is due process.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.